before we start today's episode, a bit of housekeeping for all those listeners out there. Whichever your podcast listening platform of choice, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, reviews can make a huge difference. Not only do we value your feedback, which can help us create better content, but it will also help others discover the podcast. So spread the love and leave a review if you've got a minute. And with that, on with today's show. So I'm the Reverend Dr. Jenny McKay, veterinarian and minister in secular employment, environmentalist, activist and self-confessed cat junkie. But believe it or not, I have never climbed Tryfan's North Ridge 18 months after brain surgery, nor have I agreed to perform live stand-up comedy for charity. Someone who has is my guest today, tech entrepreneur, author, brain tumour survivor and champion of women in business, Delyth Smith. Welcome to the show, Del.
Thank you. Super lovely to be here.
Oh, very pleased to have you. Thank you so much for joining us today. So can I ask you, what is more daunting, scaling Tryfan or the prospect of doing a stand-up comedy routine?
Oh, the comedy routine is far scarier. Nobody can hear you fail when you're on Tryfan. It might hurt a little bit more, but the ego bruises far more badly than a knee or an elbow. So no, I think I've spent my entire life loving making people laugh. So the utter horror if I stand up there, even if it's for brain tumour research, which does give me a bye. I think there'll be some nervous hitters. But yes, if nobody thinks what I'm saying is funny, I will be mortified beyond the depths of any crevasse.
I know we've got a cabaret show coming up in our church, and I was thinking, should I do a little comedy act? But I think, it's, as you say, if you stand there and nobody laughs, it is very embarrassing.
Oh, Jenny, you can always fall back on saying something about pussy galore, and I never will laugh. They will just laugh, especially if you're holding and stroking the cat like those out.
I shall have to do that. But for listeners who aren't familiar anyway, and I think I've said the name wrong, I said Tryfan, it is Tryfan. Can you tell us what it meant to return to Tryfan and how it felt to reach the summit again?
Oh, well, I've done Tryfan many times because I grew up in North Wales and I've scaled many Welsh mountains. However, I'd never done Tryfan's North Ridge, which is quite a scramble. And I'd had it on my purview. I really wanted to do it. Last year, I wasn't up to it. But this year, seeing as I've got major challenges to come next year, I just thought I'd jump on it. And I think I was so hyped on adrenaline because I didn't want to just do it, Jenny. I wanted to do it well. I wanted to feel that this was taken in my stride. And as such, I was just so hyped that when I got to the top, I think I was still waiting for the hard bit.
Oh, right.
You know, it was like an out-of-body experience. I was just so super focused and loving it. That yes, it was sort of, it felt like I just flew up. I didn't. It took about 4 hours.
So it was 4 hours to get up there.
Yes, I think it was 4.5 up and down, which is roughly, it's respectable.
It is.
Respectable.
That is very, very respectable. Wow, I'm very impressed. And another thing you've done, of course, you've written and spoken movingly about your diagnosis and recovery. So can you take us back to that moment that everything changed? And what were the early warning signs and how you finally got your diagnosis?
Right. Well, when I finally had quite a large seizure whilst working over in Sheffield, that was really the sort of the final thing that I had been getting more and more poorly. You know, I'm super fit usually, and I'd done some mountain challenges early in 2023. And no matter how hard I tried, I was just finding exhaustion, depression, confusion creeping into my life. I was becoming an absolute pest at the local doctor's surgery, and I was being told menopause, depression, maybe long COVID, but I truly knew something wasn't right. And then I was on one of my usual pre-Christmas crazy diets, and I can remember I was practicing for some social media interviews in somebody's kitchen, and I just looked at my husband, who was stood right in front of me. I was clutching my wooden spoon as my phone microphone, and I just looked at him. I can vaguely remember saying, I really don't feel very well, and I kept forgetting my lines. It was only 2 lines, and I had it written on my hand. And the next minute, I woke up in the ambulance being blue lighted to the Northern General, blood all over my chest where I'd bitten through my tongue. I was strapped in, and I was trying to explain to them I'm not epileptic. I just possibly hadn't eaten very much that morning and possibly passed out. And I could just hear this voice coming out of my mouth, sort of, because my mouth was just full of damage. And they were saying, how long have you been epileptic, Mrs. Smith? And I was, and then sort of I was taken straight into a CT scan, then plonked in front of a very white-knuckled nurse who delivered the verdict that they'd found an enormous tumour on my right frontal lobe that certainly on the scan photographs, appeared to be taking up about a quarter of my head. And they really couldn't quite believe that I hadn't died long since. It was, but it had been there for a long time. And I think, for me, I'm sort of working a lot with some brain tumour charities now. And really, I I don't like to say super lucky, but compared to, I think there's well over 100 different types of tumour. You can, you never really know when it's going to be discovered, how it's going to be discovered, where in the brain it's going to be growing, how fast it's going to be growing, what type of tumour it is. And even though mine had been there for probably well over 5 years, it was a newly categorised tumour that looked like an oligodendroglioma. However, when my pathology came back, they said that this was a bit of a sort of a subspecies. And they managed to get my amazing surgeon, Helen, she got 98% of it out. Fantastic. So, the operation over 8 hours was really successful. And with it being a slow grower, I didn't need to have the chemo and radiotherapy. But compared to lots of other people with this, this affliction, I would very much class myself as one of the lucky ones.
Absolutely. And you had to keep really pushing for answers, didn't you? Until that dreadful moment when it all came to, its awful conclusion.
Yeah, I was absolutely, I just kept going back over and over again to the doctors. My walking dropped off, my reading dropped off, and then finally in the middle of Wilmslow, I got to a traffic light and I simply didn't know how to drive. And I was completely convinced this is it. I've got dementia or early onset dementia, one of my, my biggest fears. I just had to get out of the car. Everybody was honking their horns, and I just had to phone my husband up and really confront the truth I'd been hiding from him, which was that, something's going terribly wrong in my head. So yes, my poor GP, I think she was really trying. But even though, after a couple of months in Salford Royal, surrounded in the neurology department, surrounded with people with these problems, it is quite rare. It is rare. And they do not do, let me just pop you in for an MRI, because these are massively expensive procedures. And there could be lots of people with something in their head that would never be a problem to them. But once you've been diagnosed, the ramifications for insurance and that's, is massively serious. You know, it's a stone that, quite frankly, unless it's life-threatening, really, they're not stones to be overturned willy-nilly.
No. And like you say, they try and go through all the more common diagnoses, I suppose, don't they?
Yes. Which is why, I don't really I was very frustrated at the time. But in retrospect, when I look back, you have to go through all the more likely things before you start going, I'm thinking it might be
something else. Yeah.
Because I never had a headache, Jenny. Never had a headache.
Right. Yeah. That's the other thing. I mean, I'm no expert in this, but you would think that a headache might be one of the most, or you would have felt it building up gradually.
Yeah, not dizziness, not all the things that it would present, which would set alarm bells going. I think I didn't have. But that's personality change, your frontal lobe. I became very disinhibited and apparently extremely rude. Possibly might be good for, I might resurrect that one from a stand-up. You can't cancel me. It's my tumour.
Oh, and you're not normally rude, are you? Well, only when needed.
No, Reverend Vess,
you're not rude
all the time. Never swear or anything.
Ooh, even a Reverend vet swears. But you once said, and you told me, I'm healing, not cured, but always stepping forward. And what does that look like today?
Well, I had an MRI last week. I have MRIs every 3 months. They were every month and every 2 months. I'm on to every 3 months now. And they didn't get all the tumour out, which means they have to monitor the tumour site. And I did have some regrowth last year, of which they didn't really identify exactly what was growing back. However, I have just felt, after having something so big in my brain, I feel so well now in comparison.
I bet.
And I think people see me and they see me posting on social media, climbing and back in the mountains. And I think, I don't particularly like to sort of give any sort of lurid details of tumour growing back and the fact, and in the evening, my inability to barely do anything. And I think sometimes, even though I have really, really sort of found the sort of the support so helpful. I think it is something where people get slightly, I think people get bored. I think people just get bored of hearing the moaning. And I think also when you're the person who's the ill person, I also became, quite dependent on all the sympathy and support. Yeah. I know it sounds sort of quite cringy, but I will, if I go for that MRI and they come back and go, oh, look, it stopped growing, it's just disappeared, you're completely cured. There's a tiny little piece. Obviously, I'd be so relieved. It would be miraculous. But I suppose there would be a part of me that would miss all the exceptional sympathy and support and understanding and, quite frankly, a heck of a lot of slack that I've been given.
Yes. That's right. And also focusing, I suppose, you had your surgery and your recuperation and there was all the support during that, wasn't there? And then as you gradually recover, it just naturally heals away, doesn't it?
I did an iron for ages.
Did you?
Oh, no. I'm back on it now, though. I feel more like me now than I have done for years. And people keep saying, oh, the old Del's back. And I'm sort of, I'll go with that. You know, I still have my neuropsychology appointments every month, and I think she's very I think she's wary that I might just be in complete denial, because it's highly unlikely, the scenario of like it's all better, you're completely cured. It could go dormant, but I'm on what they call the watch and wait list.
Right.
But I don't think you can be a entrepreneur without being able to compartmentalize. So I'm not in denial. I'm trying to live my best life for the moment, with most definitely renewed values and priorities. But you know, for sure, I'll just, you know, parcel that, you know, worst case scenarios off, deal with them when they come, and just, you know, try and do as much good as I can in whatever time I've got left. You know, it's best life for me, not necessarily long life. That's my focus.
And to that end, you've written a memoir called Brainworm, haven't you?
Yeah.
And I think it's important for you, isn't it? You really wanted to share your story.
Yes, for sure. It was something I did last year before, you know, I think before I could go back to sort of trying to work. I'd kept lots of notes and diaries in hospital, and I just wanted to almost exercise it out of my head, get it down onto onto the computer, and then parcel it all off so that I could then be free to move forward from it. And it was people would say, is it very cathartic experience? And it wasn't. It was a brutal reliving of some horrendous times. But I tried to turn it into something that was dark and funny, and really carried the torch for the patient's journey, not just brain tumour sufferers.
Yeah.
Any type of, you know, person who's had any long stays in hospital. And I know you've had your own health journey as well. So anybody who's had, you know, any time at all as a patient, because I think there's universal experiences in there, in how they deal with any new eyes on the world, how they sort of cope with changes in their life, the people that cared for them. Oh, just all manner of things, really. So it's all packed into 90,000 unedited words, which I have not, I would just like to say, on this podcast right about now, I have not used AI in my memoir, not for one single sentence.
No. You have so much of yourself, and, you know, genuinely what's happened. I don't think that could ever be reproduced by AI.
No, I think it's quite if it's not a unique tale, I think it's uniquely told.
And it's available. It's out there, isn't it? Brainworm already?
It is nearly out there. I was hoping to launch it into the world on the 2-year anniversary of my seizure. It was good to go, but I was highlighted by my proofreader that there was 11 quotes, because each chapter, at the top of each chapter, there's a little epigram of, is it an epitaph, an epigram, just a little quote which is really important to me. So it's words, a TV show, a film, a book, or a song, that these things that have made me me. And 11 of those were songs, and it was flagged up that even if I used 2 lines from a song, 6 words, there was copyright issues. And and I want this book to, I want to use this as a vehicle to raise money for, you know, cancer, tumour, brain tumour charities. I've got quite a few charities now who are going to help get the book out there. And the last thing I wanted them to do is get some lawyer from EMI or, you know, some record agency saying that's £50,000 for the use of that approach, please. So I'm just in the final throes of editing. I'm going to turn them into paraphrases to get out of that little hole. But so that and my son who records audiobooks is going to let me do a free audiobook with him. So I'm going to have to read it all out.
Ooh.
And then I'm going to release it like my fourth child. That's a very lonely, self-indulgent one. And hopefully if people like it, they will be induced to make a donation to a charity, something to do with health, really. I'm not going to narrow it down to one charity. It's literally whoever, the inspiration it gives. My sister's mother-in-law had, stomach surgery because she'd got some really bad problems there. And she sort of came up to me at Christmas and just said nobody had ever told a hospital stay like that. She just thought she was the only one, and she found herself laughing at things she remembered. So I would say, well, you can donate to your local hospital charity or to Crohn's Research or something. So that's the mission with Brainworm. It's to get it stuck in people's head and try and make it have some positive impact on the patient's journey.
That's wonderful about Brainworm. And yes, you said that there are 90,000 words, so I'm afraid we won't be able to get you on a podcast to read your book, but I'll be looking forward to letting the listeners know when your book is available. And that's just tremendous work with brain tumour charities and others that people can support. And just shifting slightly, I know you've had multiple multi-million-pound business exits, but you've also started over in those, haven't you, more than once? And I guess those pivots have taught you really about risk resilience and letting go, which is probably fed into how you dealt with your diagnosis as well.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I've been both successful and disastrous in as it appears, business and in health. However, the resilience that you need to cope, and I would say whether people have had their health journeys, their work or business journeys, family journey, you're not. There is no life that is uneventful, and I think the resilience that you need, and since we're on the Reverend back, that's the faith that you need that things are going to turn round, that that you are loved, that you have a place, you're valued, and I think certainly in society today that's so important.
And what about your faith, Del? Did you have a faith before the diagnosis? Do you have a faith after the diagnosis? What's happened to that?
I think if I'm brutally honest, I was probably I was always quite spiritual to some degree, but I was probably quite agnostic before my diagnosis. And I think during the course of very, very, very nearly dying twice, I had quite the road to Damascus, quite an epiphany in hospital that my sort of, yes, my feelings of spirituality were definitely more rooted in my soul than I ever thought. That I really didn't feel, I felt as long as somebody was holding my hand, as long as, I felt loved, I felt like I could move on. I definitely felt that there was more. And I know that a lot of people are so terrified to die. I think I was left very much feeling that if I ever got out of the hospital alive, I would be terrified not to make the most of this life, but definitely less terrified of the whole bigger picture, because I really did feel that it was just one stop on the journey, really. And, whatever way people frame it, whichever religion or spirituality they feel is important in their life. I certainly feel in my life it would not be as rich if I didn't sort of, lean into that.
And you've used this phrase before, touched by the paw of God, which I think is absolutely lovely.
Yes, well, that's. I'm a massive dog lover. I'm into dogs, what you are to cats, I think. I haven't got anything about my sister's a cat lover. I love her cat. I was cat sitting earlier this summer and it disappeared for 4 days and I nearly had a absolute nervous breakdown. But no, my urge to get out of hospital was very much, linked to my family, my husband, but also my dogs. And when I did get out, and I was just there with my dogs. I've got a little dachshund called Twiggy, and she snuggles on my lap. And it's just, yes, I think it's love. Change the word God for love. Spirituality for connection, and I think we're probably all there. Really, I think we all know it. We can't see it. We can't understand it. We use this word belief, but we all know it. We know that when you have that sense of connection, you feel better.
Yeah. And animals give that unconditional love as well. And I'm sure they knew that you weren't well and were sensing that in you.
Yeah. No, you've said it. That unconditional love is just. Yeah, it is almost spiritual in its wonderfulness. They are my dogs. They're like my little spirit animals.
Oh, well, that's wonderful to hear. And I'm sure all the listeners were so pleased that you're doing so well after this, terrible diagnosis. And in fact, I know that you are aiming to scale, I hope I say this correctly, Hernley Ridge on the Matterhorn next year. So another mountain. So no half measures for you, Del, are there?
No, I think yes. I think the stand-up is going to be really terrifying, but I think if I can, and it's a massive if I can get up the Hernley Ridge on the Matterhorn next summer. I've got a sort of interdisciplinary meeting with my consultant to make sure I can go up to altitude and that I will be safe to do so. But if it's down to just absolute determination, I am absolutely determined. It's representative of me being better than I was before. And that for me, it's probably quite self-indulgent, but if I did have a slightly bruised head, it's always been a head in the clouds, and it will take me higher than I've ever been before. And if it never happens, I'll have a really good go, maybe raise money for, the brain tumour charities closest to my heart. And it will inspire me. I think everybody needs a goal. Where just getting up, everybody needs to have an ambition and a goal. And at the moment, my life as an entrepreneur will have its ups and downs, but I'm going up a mountain, I'll have its ups and downs.
Yes.
And let's make them a little bit less eventful than the ups and downs I've had over the last couple of years.
Absolutely. And beyond that, summit and the mountain climbing, what's next for you?
Gosh, well, there's, I've got a lot of work to do with the book, because I'll say everybody who's ever thought of writing a book will probably have researched that writing the book's only a very small part of it. I want to write a sequel because I think the 2 years recovery has got some extremely funny stories and a lot of inspiration. And I think if Brainworm was the universal story of illness and being a patient, I think the sequel will definitely be the universal experience of recovery and all its ups and downs. So there's that. And I've got a couple of irons in the fire with business, but if I told you, I'd have to kill you. They are under wraps at the moment, but due to the we've had some successes, but due to a couple of big failures, I don't want to get excited until I've got it in the bag, as it were. But if I manage to pull off a business and climb the matterhorn,
yes,
I'm coming back on.
You are.
I'm going to bring cat collars and everything.
Absolutely. Del Smith Part 2. Well, Del, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you and, hearing your amazing story and journey. I think that's going to be such an inspiration to many people who are listening. And I wish you really, really well and look forward to hearing the next part of the journey. So thank you for joining.
Thank you so much for having me on, and all your listeners, keep listening. It's a fantastic chat.
Thank you.